Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, this is our first episode. Please bear with me. My camera isn't exactly the best, but that's okay. We'll get through it. And as we evolve into actually better situations and better opportunities to get better camera and better equipment, this will be improved. So today, being our first episode, there's probably going to be quite a few bugs, and we'll get this all figured out. Uh, then we'll improve. We'll get better. That's all people can ask for. So the purpose of this show is to teach history, people to learn history, just discuss history for people that are fans of history, that are history buffs. We'll have special guests on here on occasion. Everybody will have opportunities to ask questions during the video. So we just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to just talk about something they enjoy in the history and different topics, and go from there. You might learn something, you might not learn something. You can use this as for tutorials. You can use this for maybe use in a classroom. I am a teacher. My co-host will be joining us here shortly. He is also a teacher. Many of the people we have as special guests will be either teachers at the high school level or even history buffs, or on many occasions they will be professors with with master's degrees, with doctorates published. So there'll be different ones we have on here that will hit some of these topics pretty in depth. We'll go with different comments that you might make that on topics you might want to see in the future. We'll definitely want to try and get to different topics that everybody will appreciate and everybody's interested in. We're going to hit everything. We'll go from the basics of learning history, what questions asked during historical discussions, what we use to study history, the tools that we use. We'll talk about different eras. We'll talk about different historical events. We'll talk about different historical people. We'll talk about different historical eras. So there'll be all kinds of different things we talk about. And obviously, with a short show, 40 minutes or so initially, because right now we just kind of have to use the Zoom and go with what we've got until we get past some of this COVID-19 issues that we're dealing with and some of the social distancing. And eventually, we'll get to where we can all be together. The two hosts, myself, my co-host when he joins us, special guest. We can all be in the same location. And with better equipment, we can make this better opportunity for everybody. So when we talk about history, sorry, I got a little bit of a cold here, so you might see me scratching my nose. The mustache gets in the way sometimes, and occasionally you might hear a bark or see one of my four-legged children pop into the screen. They obviously don't quite know etiquette or video etiquette. So we might have them join us occasionally, unplanned. But when we talk about history, there's certain things that people need to realize when they do study history, and it's hard for people to understand how to study history. That they see it as boring. A lot of people do. The way I was taught when I was in high school, it was very boring. It's a lot of memorization, names, dates, locations, things like that. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is just that, those names, dates, location, what happened, why things happen. Some of the things we're going to talk about is causes and effects and how they impact people today, even though something happened some dead dude 200 years ago that people might not be interested in, that they don't realize that those actions that those dead dudes 200 years ago have an impact on our lives today, even though somebody you've even heard of. So we'll get started with some of the things like cause and effect. When studying history, cause and effect is a major, I can't stress that enough, player in how we study history and ways to study history. Cause and effect is basically everything that drives history. History, for I'll give an example. When we're looking at history, cause and effect does have that impact on history. And it really is something that, when as a teacher, I'm not really sure how to approach it from a different aspect other than teacher, because that's what I am. But when I talk to my students at the beginning of the year, one of the first lessons that I teach is not just going straight into, okay, this dude did this dude did that, or this woman did this, or this is what happened, or all these people got killed, or whatever the case may be. I go into teaching them the importance of understanding cause and effect, and that every action that we take has some kind of effect, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And those effects eventually turn into causes for other effects. So everything that has ever happened has always been a cause, an effect, and that effect becoming a cause for something else. So there's always, always, always cause and effect going on every day in our life. So what we talk about, I'll give one example of cause and effect. People don't realize how just different events can impact how history turns out. For example, let's go cause and effect relationship between World War I and World War II. You have a lot of people don't realize that World War I is a cause of World War II. And people that don't study history enough, or have found history boring, or whatever the case may be, have not been able to understand that. So let me real quick. I'm going to add my co-host on here, Ben, and what we're going to do is we're going to also make Ben available for being a one of our speakers today. Got to get him to unmute.
Thank you, dude.
There we go. We got Ben today. Ben,
sorry, after all morning loading up the computer, you're working, and it decided as I entered the meeting, oh, your computer's kind of a problem, it needs to shut down. So we're doing this by phone today. I'm sorry.
Oh, hey, you know what? That's okay. Whatever way we can get you here. Love the beard. Love the beard. It's historically epic.
It's pretty good.
I had just started talking about cause and effect, and I was giving an example of how World War I was an effect of, or was a cause, sorry, not an effect, was a cause of World War II. A lot of people that study history know that, but a lot of people don't realize how much of a direct effect World War I had on World War II. So I was kind of going to go over an example. And
just off the persecution of the German people after World War I, and they're blaming them, caused the financial collapse that led to it. So
oh yeah, there's definitely, and I did a little bit of a slideshow. I'm not really going to put it up here because, well, hell, slideshows are boring. But we'll kind of go over it real quick, just to give people an idea of how cause and effect is the key driver in anything that has to do with history.
Absolutely.
For example, on November 11th, 1918, everybody knows 11/11/11/1918 was the end, in essence, of World War I. The loser, quote unquote loser, of World War I was Germany, and they were forced to sign what was called the Treaty of Versailles, which prevented Germany from having a military in the future and required Germany to pay all the debt for the war. And that brings to your point, where you were talking about how them being blamed brought financial and economic downturn to the German economy, which frustrated people and made them turn to other ways to deal with that frustration. Well, that Treaty of Versailles, that was signed on June 28, 1919, over almost a year after the end of World War I, which that Treaty of Versailles led directly to Germans being fed up with being blamed for World War I, like you mentioned, Ben. Having to pay for a war they didn't start because, again, Germany didn't really start that war. It was started in Serbia with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, an Austrian prince. And
the whole Lusitania issue is sketchy at best for the way it sunk and exploded for not bearing arms, which in case in point, if it were bearing the munitions the Germans claimed it was before they fired upon it, we were already violating international trade.
Sure, sure.
So at that point, we already were pre-guilty, I guess you could say. We were
Right,
aiding a war effort we weren't part of.
right. In addition to those having to pay for the war that they didn't start and being blamed for World War One, they were dealing with the economic depression in Germany because they had to pay for World War One. But on top of that, when you have so much destruction, you have to fix everything. They started seeing something that you'll hear in historical terms, especially when it starts talking about economics, is the hyperinflation of, example, a loaf of bread prior to World War One might have cost, say, 10 cents. Now, following World War One, you couldn't get a loaf of bread in Germany for less than $5,000. I mean, it is just that's what hyperinflation does. It's crazy, and they were getting frustrated with dealing with that. So a lot of people started forming a new political party, which has become known National Socialist German Workers' Party, or many people know it as the Nazi Party, which got its start on February 24th, 1920. That's how far back the Nazi Party goes.
Yeah, a lot of people fail to realize Hitler was a soldier during World War One for the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. That he also was favorably looked upon by most everybody, including his Jewish counterparts, until he felt wronged by a particular one, if I remember correctly, his lieutenant or major. And he even told him point blank, "I've always stood up for your people." But he felt slighted by that, and that led to some of his early hatred before he went on to try to become an artist, which, as we know, didn't go so well at the time.
Right. And I didn't think about it before we came here. At the example that I used from World War One to World War Two. There's a very good documentary. It's almost kind of like a movie called The First World War that highlights exactly what you're talking about. He had an officer that was above him that gave him an order that was a Jewish officer that he saw as putting him in a position of peril and being part of the reason that Germany lost the war. So that developed into Hitler's hate for Jews later on, and obviously we know about the Holocaust and the extermination of millions of Jews because of that hatred he had for them, which again, cause and effect. So a direct effect of that formation of the Nazi Party, Adolf Hitler was given a platform to use his skills. He'd become a rising star in the Nazi Party because of his speaking abilities. That drew more and more new members into the Nazi Party because they bought into the nationalist idea that Jews and Marxists were to blame for Germany's problems. He became the leader of the Nazi Party. That was July 29, 1921, which directly created November 8th to November 9th, 1923. Due to his growing power, Adolf Hitler and many members engaged in what the Nazi Party attempted to take over the German government and what a lot of people now know as the Beer Hall Putsch.
Right.
Which, again, we know didn't work out. The effect of that was, due to his leadership role, Hitler was convicted of treason, sentenced to prison for 5 years, which directly led to his time in prison, giving him the opportunity to write Mein Kampf.
Yeah, he had a
struggle.
His prison was what we would consider maybe a Martha Stewart jail time nowadays.
Right,
something where
right.
it was more of a spa, which most people think, oh, he went to prison. Yeah, he went to live in a nice field house with somebody who waited on him hand and foot day in, day out. He had all the amenities that a free person had, with the exception of being able to leave the property. So,
right. And well, because he had the time he had in there, he spent writing. He also wrote essays defending his actions, the Beer Hall Putsch, which, again, his popularity grew because he had his defenders. And actually, he was released from that 5-year prison sentence in less than a year, which directly led to Germany's dismal economic conditions, them facing the harsh treatment from the Treaty of Versailles, people becoming frustrated. And because of his ability to channel their discontent into supporting the Nazi Party, the Nazis won the election of July 31st, 1932, gaining control of Germany's government, making it the largest political party in Germany at the time.
And people don't realize either. I don't think it's not something discussed in school, usually, unless there's somebody who's really done the work. Is they didn't just walk in there and win the government. No. They went in there, and each time their party was a little bigger, when there was a vote, they just walk out. When they walk out on a vote, their government was set up that you didn't get to vote. The vote was null. So each time he came back in with more representative officials of the Nazi Party,
Yep.
and as they continued, their party grew to the point where it's filled up both the left and right hand sides of that of their what do you call it? Brain fart here.
Parliament.
Yeah, their government anyway.
Right.
To the point where they grew quickly but slowly. It wasn't a major fast overtake the way people think. Oh, he just walked in, took over. He did a lot of convincing because he was good at it. He said what people wanted to hear, and he put the blame where somebody they could focus at physically. And he said the right things. He said what the people wanted and needed to hear, who were desperately struggling just to survive.
Sounds familiar, don't it?
Yeah.
I'm not going to make statements. I don't want to lead people to think different things. I don't want to lead their thoughts processes. But
no, but
sounds familiar.
It was a slow burn, considering how long it took to actually get there. We're talking 1919 to 32. We're talking 13 years. It's a slow buildup. But after he hit the pinnacle, we all know what happened then.
Yeah. So have you ever had an opportunity to see those slideshows I sent you?
I didn't. Again, my computer's giving me problems. So,
okay.
Unfortunately, it's just I'm gonna let it sleep for now. It's old technology for an old guy, and it just needs work.
Old guy, you're a puppy.
Yeah,
you're a puppy, man. All right. So continuing on, once the Nazis, and again, cause and effect. Once the Nazis gained control of the German government, on January 30th, 1933, German President Hindenburg named Adolf Hitler as the Chancellor of Germany. Due to Hitler's popularity in the Nazi Party, which had become the largest political party in Germany and had grown since that original election in 1932, which led to Hitler's power in his position as Chancellor of Germany being emboldened enough to send Nazi stormtroopers into a campaign of violence against his perceived enemies.
Even his own people.
Parties.
Not even perceived enemies, his own brown shirts at one point too.
That hadn't happened yet, but I mean, at this point, we're looking at the effect was, oh yeah, you're my enemy, you're opposition. We need to get rid of the communists. We need to get rid of the German Democratic Workers' Party. And
well, they say, they start with one group, and you call for help with the next one, and then they come for the next group. Eventually, there's no one left to call for, and that's how he did it.
Yep. And what you were referring to was the SS or the brown shirts. It wasn't that long after that. It was a little over a year after that, June 30th, 1934. Right. He got to the point where, okay, now that I've gotten rid of my political opponents in other political parties, now it's time to get rid of my opponents within the Nazi Party itself. So that's when he ordered Heinrich Himmler, his second in command at the time, his propaganda minister, to have his Schutzstaffeln or the SS eliminate and basically murder anybody that was in opposition to Hitler's power. This became known as, a lot of us know, the Night of the Long Knives, Kristallnacht, and that was solidifying Hitler's power as Das Führer, or the leader of Germany.
And at that time, when he went after his own people, he was still very popular among them, but he knows Hitler knew what he created, and he knew that he had to fear what he had created, because they would come for him, because I think they were more staunch Nazis than he was. Yep. And they realized that he had faltered in any way, that he would be an end to them. So he preemptively struck against his own people, which is, that's brutal.
Yep. And then as these things happened and nobody did anything about him, he got more and more emboldened, to where he got to the point where he started implementing his plan by annexing Austria, which he saw as a step to unifying Germany after Germany was broke up following World War I. So, he went to that. He started unifying Germans under one flag, which even when he almost took Austria by force, English Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain still decided that he wanted to appease Hitler instead of doing something about it, the appeasement. And, and eventually, even with his violation of the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler began to realize that he could do whatever he wanted to because nobody was going to say anything to stop him. They were just going to try to appease him, thinking, okay,
Nobody,
well, if we appease him, he'll stop. We'll be okay. But that, they obviously didn't know Hitler.
well, nobody wanted another war either.
No, they didn't.
After what had happened in World War One, that was to be the war to end all wars. The last thing they wanted was another global conflict. And Great Britain knew alone they couldn't do it, as the United States was at the time was rather isolationist,
Oh yeah,
much like
definitely.
took the stance again that we had prior to World War One, which we barely entered to help. We backed off. So
Right.
without being able to count on us for help, France is still devastated from the war. Poland,
Yep.
all those Western European countries and Central European countries, none of them had recovered fully yet. I mean,
Right.
we see that now, even 70 years after World War II, we have countries in the Eastern Bloc and some parts of Central Europe still rebuilding from bullet holes from World War II. So you can't imagine 13 years was enough time back then with the lack of people and technology that we have now that we can rebuild faster. For them to be able to get back to a place where they were, okay, we're set and able to defend it for another combat, and they weren't, and they knew that they couldn't count on the United States.
Right. And going with what we've been talking about, the cause and effect, that whole being emboldened by England not really doing anything with the appeasement and them not really understanding Hitler, on top of them not really wanting to get into a war, that's when he decided September 1st, 1939, this would be a good time to take Poland. We got German people in Poland. Let's go ahead. Let's blitz into Poland. Let's take Warsaw. So finally, England had enough. And on September 3rd, 2 days later, as a result of Germany's invasion of Poland, United Kingdom and France, two of the key ally powers against Germany, finally declared war on Germany. But now, this is 16 years. Actually, if you look at it, 19 years after the rise of the Nazi Party, 6 years after the rise of Hitler as the ultimate leader, or Das Führer, in Germany. 6 years later, after all of these things that Hitler did to show that he was going to be aggressive, that he was going to do these types of things, they finally declared war on Germany. So, I mean, this is where we can see how cause and effect, just one after the other leads to finally something else.
Once the pin started falling, it was not stoppable. Because when you have the UK, you have Canada, Australia, New Zealand. You have France. You have
India.
Belgium, India. You saw the world was involved immediately. All Britain had to do, which they always said about the Germans, was that if you're born under the British flag, you will never see the sunset as you will under the German flag. So,
right,
because the whole world was British under the British, even at that time, British influence. Too, even into China until 1990s. So,
yeah, right. A lot of younger people don't realize that up until in the 1990s, that Hong Kong was still part of the British Empire, not part of China.
And I remember my buddy from Hong Kong, when his dad was from there, when it came down, that was a big deal. I mean, it was when Britain left to give power back to the Chinese or the Hong Kong population. That was a big deal. But yeah, so immediately with the UK, when the UK struck, that pen stroke to the paper, that involved the entire world immediately. And there was no way to avoid World War II at that point.
Right. So I've noticed that we really haven't had anybody join us yet, which is all right. This is kind of an opening show, just kind of a Zoom meeting type thing that we'll eventually put on YouTube. But for anybody that's interested, once we do post this on YouTube and it's visible, if you have any questions for us, please go to, and I'm going to share my screen real quick and show people what I'm talking about. If you would like to, please go to our History's Three Sides page on Facebook. Request an invitation to join us there at History's Three Sides, and submit any questions you have, and we'll get to those when we have the opportunity. That way, you can get your questions answered about what we're talking about, even if you're not on the meeting with us right now. So
Or if you have a topic you want us to discuss at a later date, would be cool too. Gives us always a chance, especially if it's something obscure, it gives us a chance to research it for the fun, which Jen and I both have the illness of incredible nerd history. And we, if there's something that we can look at, we'll look at it. Or there's something you just want to know more about that we might already know about. Give us something to run with.
And like I said earlier, before Ben was able to join us, we're going to have special guests on here. And a lot of times those special guests are going to be history teachers or history buffs or even college professors with master's degrees, doctorate's degrees. They've been published. So, yeah, we're going to have all kinds of people on here. So different topics, let us know. We'll try and get to as many as we can, as soon as we can. That way we can get a hold of those professionals in the field and find out when they can make it, so we can have that special guest, and we can announce when we'll have those. So when you'll be able to have the topic that you want to discuss, you'll be able to see those. So that's what our ultimate goal is. We want to make this a show on YouTube where people can they can subscribe to it. They can use it for tutorials. They can use it for the classroom if they would like to, or just if they want to learn about history, they can just pop on there and learn some stuff about history.
Right. I've already spoke to a few people regarding this, and American Union Veterans of American Civil War. I'm sorry, the Sons of the Union Veterans of the American Civil War locally here. I know the leadership, and they would be very interested in at some point coming on and doing some kind of Civil War work with us. So that was exciting.
Definitely, yeah. One of my colleagues that I worked with at a high school when I was going through school during my student teaching and student teaching days when I was still getting my teaching license. He teaches war history classes. He's one of them that we'll have on here when we talk about American war history and things like that. So, we're going to have a lot of people involved in this, even people that are not necessarily involved in it now that might become fans of the YouTube page. We'll have opportunities for people that are fans to join us and, as a special guest. So,
and we've discussed possible field trips, even to cemeteries and whatnot, just to show it off. So, or even historical events or venues, which we have a lot around us. And Darren and I are some big dudes, so we'll put the walking shoes on. And we'll, take our beards and our bellies. We'll go for a walk. We'll show you guys some stuff.
We'll get out there, and one thing, ultimately, this show is about just discussing history, talking about history, learning history. But, there's no reason we can't get together and, do the field trips like you were saying. There's no reason we can't, especially if for whatever reason, I don't know if it will, if our History's Three Sides show on YouTube becomes popular, we'll have T-shirts and hats. I mean, yeah, obviously that's goals for way down in the future, but who knows what this might turn into? It might turn into nothing. It might just turn into something where we get to listen to ourselves on YouTube, or it could turn into something big. But we want to make sure everybody that wants to be involved has an opportunity to be involved, and just see what happens and build from there.
Sounds good.
Switching topics a little bit, we talked about the cause and effect, and since we didn't have anybody really here to ask questions, we'll fill those questions later. But another important topic when it comes to talking about history, not only cause and effect, but something that a lot of historians, especially a lot of history teachers, recognize is something called the 5 W's. The 5 W's of history. And well, I have to admit, one of our mutual friends, I'll give a shout out to Will, brought up the point that there is also an H involved in there. No matter how small that H might be, it's in there. The 5 W's and 1 H of history: who, where, when, what, why, and that little bitty how. So the significance of these is each of these questions are used by historians to explain history. However, there is a rank of importance to these questions, which could lead to an argument as to which ones are more significant than the others, and that is what we're going to try to explore a little bit today. Which ones are more significant than the others when you're studying history? Now, that's not to say none of that, none of them are important. They're all important when studying history, but some of them are a little bit more important than others when you want to know about historical events. So, for example, each historian takes their own approach to how they study history, and significant, and how significant each of the five W's and the one H will, as compared to the others. You can imagine there's numerous theories and opinions on this, and our opinion today doesn't necessarily claim in any way to speak for what other historians believe. You may even find that here today that even Ben and I disagree on what the orders might be, just based on our approach. But regardless of the opinions of which is more significant than the others, it is vital to realize that all of them are necessary to history or historical events to understand those. So I know some of you are going, dude, hurry up already. Let's hear what you got to say. Well, when studying history, it's important to know all five of the W's, but there is a varying importance to them in the grand scheme of history or in a historical event. However, there's not much difference in the importance between the three last important W's, or what I consider the three last important W's. Additionally, there's not much difference between the two most important W's that I consider. Many of you want to ask, dude, just tell us already what the ranking of importance are. So let's do that. My opinion now, Ben, you might have a different opinion of this, and then definitely if you do, make sure you say something. But my opinion of the least important of the five W's is who. Who did something is the least important of the five W's, flat out. It's not to say that knowing who did something or who was involved in something wasn't important, but when compared to the other four W's, who did it just isn't really that important. For example, you want proof? Okay, Leon Czolgosz. Ben, you know who that is? Leon Czolgosz?
Vaguely.
Vaguely, right. I'm a history teacher. I barely don't know the name. Well, and that's exactly my point. Leon Czolgosz. Who? Exactly. So the knowing who isn't quite as important as the others. Do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I think the close second to last would be where, but I think who, yeah, because anybody can do anything without the rest of the context, though, it doesn't matter.
Right.
For example, where, if the Holocaust had happened in the United States instead of Europe,
right.
where the effect of the Jewish population had been as big as it was in Europe, in the United States. Well, no, there was not the Jewish population. So
right.
where is very important on that one, just as it was with the Japanese internment. Was that going to happen in East? Is it going to happen in Europe? No, there weren't Japanese all over the continent of Europe. They must come to the United States along with Chinese immigrants for railroad work. So right. I agree. I think who really doesn't matter. It's the events that person could create, because anybody can be born a Hitler.
Right.
I mean, honestly, anybody could be. That's not an exclusive to where they live or how they live necessarily. We have people like Slobodan Milosevic. We have people like Stalin, who we don't talk about being somebody who committed horrible Holocaust-like crimes as well, because at the time he was our friend. So, and again, even those people weren't fighting for countries they were born in. Right. Stalin was born in Georgia. Adolf Hitler was an Austrian. So, right. You have people who are not even born in that nation who are out there going, oh, we're going to go for the greatness of this nation. So, yeah, who is largely irrelevant until they've done something.
Right. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Slobodan Milosevic. Woo-wee. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Well, Yugoslavia hits hard to home for me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
His name's pretty, not popular.
And you know what? You actually led right into what I consider to be the second least popular, and it seems like we agree on this, and that's where. Where something happened is slightly more important than who did the thing. It's important to know who did the thing, but as I just showed, oftentimes the who isn't really known. Few people know that Leon Czolgosz assassinated. I said ass twice. Isn't that cool? Or he assassinated our 25th president, William McKinley.
Right. He was
But
an
many
anarchist,
people,
right?
what's that?
He was an anarchist, right?
Yeah,
Was it him and
but
one other guy that fled into the barn or whatever and got caught?
yeah, something like that. I don't remember
Yeah,
exactly what it
like I
was.
said, I know the name historically. I'm just trying to remember details. I remember
Yeah.
he and an anarchist buddy, they assassinated him. They ran for a barn or some kind of harvest building. They got caught. They both were shot up inside, and
Oh,
that was
that was John Wilkes Booth with Lincoln.
no. There was a pair of them that had done that. There was a second one like that.
Yeah, I don't know if this
I
one
remember them
was
being
that one. No,
anarchists. I'll
I
have
don't
to
know.
look it up.
It could be. And people don't know who Leon Zolgols is unless they're major historian buffs. But many people, well, at least many Americans, have heard of Buffalo, New York,
Correct.
which the assassination happened in Buffalo, New York, during the Pan American Exposition. That leads us to believe that there was a reason it happened there. So, the who, Zolglas, okay, great. Who's this guy? Did it in Buffalo, New York. Okay, well, I know where Buffalo is. Well, actually think about it. Maybe McKinley was a Buffalo Bills fan, and Leon, who was a Raiders fan, didn't like Bills fans.
Well, yeah, you're gonna have that.
I mean, I don't know. Nobody's a Raiders fan, anyways. They suck. But
Gotta go with it.
where, again, we agree is the next. And then the third of the quote unquote least important is when. Those are out there that might want to ask, how is when something happened more important than who did the thing or what happened when someone did the thing? And I would tell you that when something happened, it helps us piece together a chain of events and leads us to the most important aspect of studying history that we talked about earlier, the cause and effect.
I was gonna say I agree completely because when something happens, especially if it's a past obviously it's gonna be past.
Right.
A past event occurs is important to show the context of how modern society has learned from it.
Right.
Which we again, without getting political, we got a lot of problems now in this day and age that we've already done. We've already been through. And on a whole spectrum of stuff. So that's why we have to learn from it. And that's why the when context, I think you're right, is above the who and the where, because that shows that either we've made steps and strides to be better, or we've failed to learn from our mistakes.
Right. And and it shows like the cause and effect. Now, I could use an example. We use cause and effect when we talk about when. McKinley was a Buffalo Bills fan, causing Leon, who was a Raiders fan, to assassinate. I said ass twice again. But you can see the cause and effect. Then we get into the two more important, and again, we could disagree on which order they fall under, but we're looking at, I would say, the least of the two more important ones would be what? I'm sure you figured out that the two most important ones are, but which of the two is less important? The what happened, knowing what happened is important to know when studying history. It quite honestly tells us what happened based on what.
And if we don't know what, we can't know when.
We don't know what, we can't know when. And getting to finally the most important one, why?
Why?
This question drives the important historical principle of cause and effect. As a matter of fact, cause and effect is quite literally a series of why questions. Why did this happen? Well, because Leon is a Raiders fan. Well, why is he a Raiders fan? We don't know. They suck. But he assassinated a Buffalo Bills fan because he don't like them, because he's a Raiders fan, and all that sort of jazz. Sorry, I'm on the Raiders thing. I'm a Chiefs fan. I have to hate the Raiders, so I give them shade any chance I get.
That's okay. Go Bears.
Go Bears. Yeah. Okay. Trubisky. All I got to say is Trubisky.
No, he's gone, man.
Did they get rid of him? Oh, well.
They got him. The guy's gone.
History.
History.
All right. So, in conclusion, although we may have highlighted our ranking the importance of the 5 W's, that does not mean that this is the be-all, end-all argument to the order. The key thing to take out of this is that all 5 W's are important in studying history, but in varying degrees of significance.
And they all lead to how we are who we are today.
Exactly. There's one final aspect of the history, and that's the how. Many teachers will not cover the how question simply because the how oftentimes is covered by the why and the what questions. However, it's important to note that for the purposes of reporting history and the journalism that is involved in creating historical sources for the study of history, how needs to be included because it's not necessarily always included in that why and the what questions that we have.
And the how ultimately determine motive. How did it happen? Well, this happened because of this. How did that happen? Just like the why. How did it happen? People heard what they wanted to hear, or they ignored the what, the where, the when. It's all about how it happened. Well, it had to happen because somebody let it happen, and
Right.
that's a big part of history. Is it doesn't happen because somebody just wants it to. It happens because of how we react to our environment and the situations occurring, which, again, we're facing a lot of historical significance coming around this day and age, and it's scary to see parts of history that may not directly reflect what has happened in the past, but my God, you can draw a parallel line next to it.
Right.
So,
Right. So again, it seems like right now we're the only two here, so we don't have anybody to really ask questions. But again, I would like the people that might have the opportunity to watch our YouTube channel if you're interested in hearing a specific topic. You can absolutely send us a message on either the YouTube channel under comments, or again, I'd like to point out that we have our History's Three Sides page on Facebook that you can always send a request for an invitation. There's 3 simple questions that you answer. Nothing it's not pass or fail. It's not a quiz. It's just to kind of get an idea who you are, why you're interested in history type thing. And, and absolutely we'll add you, and you can interact with discussions that we post on there every couple of days. You'll be able to request topics that you want to see or ask questions that you might have that we didn't cover when we were creating this initial video. So please make sure you join us on that History's Three Sides. And some of you might even ask.
You got suggestions you want to hear? Like I said before, throw out an idea, because if something we don't know, we will happily research it. You asking us to research history is like asking us to go to the amusement park for most people. We are excited. We would love to do it. We're just starting up here, but give us a chance. I think we'll have a fun show going.
Yeah, and we might even, you can ask us a question that we might not know the answer to, and the teacher in me will want to go, well, you know what? That's a very good question. I don't know, but I tell you what, why don't you find out, and then you can teach me, because I'm always ready to learn. I'm always ready to learn about new things, and I am not above. I've never been above having one of my students teach me something about history. I don't know everything. It's too much history out there for any but one person to know everything.
Thankfully, because that keeps people like us driven. Because without history, without something to look for and dig into and understand, the millions of years prior to us being here, Darren and I would just slip overboard somewhere, because there's not enough out there in the world to keep us busy without trying to research where we came from, how we got here, and all the 5 W's go with it.
Right. And there's one final topic, and it's only going to take a few more minutes. We're running a little bit short on time now. One other thing I'd like to discuss today is social studies. We're talking about history. And the thing that people need to realize, that when they hear the word social studies is more than just history. You got the social studies umbrella. Of course, one of the core subjects that we learn about in school is history. Often that class isn't necessarily listed as history on the schedule that you get from your counselors or advisors. But in essence, when they say social studies, they're talking about history class. And often your history class isn't necessarily listed as that on your schedule. And this is for a reason. Yes, history is extensively covered in those classes. However, history really is only a part of social studies. You'll find that well-taught history classes will include nearly every branch of basically the 5 major fields of social studies. So, like when I say umbrella, what am I talking about when I say social studies is an umbrella? It's important to know that subject is made up of numerous areas of study, not just history. A brief list, and then and I'll talk about like my 5 major fields because there's so many that it's hard to list what falls under social studies. But you're looking at history, political science slash government, economics, geography, and culture. And that's the main stuff we're talking about when we talk about social studies. Um, Many faces of social studies, obviously, or maybe not so obviously to some. There are many more areas of study that fall under the main umbrella of social studies. In fact, there are many areas of study that fall under the 5 key fields previously mentioned. Take, for instance, my favorite of the 5, history. Under the field of history, you have duplicates of other 4 fields. So obviously there are crossovers in social studies, but you also have other topics. And it is these topics that go hand in hand with history when we're trying to figure out the 5 W's of the past. So, and some of those, people might think, oh, well, what about sociology? Well, exactly. Sociology is under that umbrella of social studies. Psychology, archaeology, anthropology, geology. We use all of these to come to a conclusion on what happened. Geologists can find clues of what happened in the past in the rocks that they study. Anthropologists go back and look at the culture of people in history. Archaeology looks at things like study the bones and artifacts left behind to determine what happened in history. So there's so many different topics that are covered by that umbrella of the words social studies.
Right. It's a very broad spectrum. But again, I'm with you. History is my key point. I do love finding the rest of this stuff though, because it's all one big happy family. It's all in the same blood. So without any of that, I mean, honestly, if we just had just the History Channel and channel watch football on, I don't think we watch much else in this house. So, Discovery.
You say that, it's funny. Before I got on the show, and you talk about that. Before I got on the show, I was watching. I don't remember what the name of the show was, but it was a bunch of different episodes of somebody studying some of the past events and kind of digging deeper into some historical events. One of them being like Lizzie Borden, one of them being like Jack the Ripper, one of them being like I don't know, the Boston Tea Party, things like that. So when I'm watching TV, 99% of the time it's probably on some sort of historical documentary.
Yep. I mean, most of my DVR is full of Expedition Unknown or World War II in color, or my beautiful, lovely wife Heather put on the new World War II documentary. It's on there. And hell, I even have Hulu and Amazon and Netflix, and halftime I get on there to watch historical stuff.
Yep.
And documentaries and whatnot, because it's like a drug. I can't get enough of it. So.
Right. Oh no. Oh, definitely. And there will be times when we're on here, especially when we're talking about a topic, when we know ahead of time what the topics are, we'll go on Amazon or Hulu or any of the other streaming services that have documentaries and things that people can watch, and we'll find documentaries that relate to that topic, and there will be some that we recommend. And we're by no means trying to push anybody specific, any specific producers on people. We're obviously, as historians, as researchers, we're going to give credit where credit is due and make sure that people know who produced these shows, who wrote the book, or who made this certain specific passage in something that we might be discussing that day. So we do not want to be anywhere near possibility of being called plagiarists when there's just too much out there. That
we both put too much education forward. We both gone through so much education. Your education, my education. Getting a graduate degree above and beyond takes tons of writing. The writing you had to do historically, especially with the APA formats, you are held to a very high standard. So no, we would never steal information. We might have information that we know, but that's universal knowledge. But if we find something and we can give credit where credit's due, by all means, I would never want to take anybody else's thunder away from them, because some of these guys, like Josh Gates, they go out and they put their foot to the ground, and my God, they find stuff out. So yeah,
Josh Gates, Josh Bernstein, one of my favorites, Simka Jakubowicz. I love Simka. Naked Archaeologist, great dude, great shows. He puts on great shows. But yeah, we'll definitely be the recommendations we'll make, and we do not want to try stealing anybody's hard work. They've done the hard work, they've done the legwork. They definitely need the credit for it, and that's something you'll see on this show. Is we will never ever claim credit for somebody else's work. It's not only is it stealing and wrong, but it's just not something. It's just not something to do.
It's nothing to do. And you know what? We want you to be able to. We want to recommend to you what we find is teachable, or what inspired us. So the last thing we want to do is to drive anything negative in there in the process. So
exactly.
We recommend is stuff that we truly found to be good, solid, and we research our people who we research. So they're yeah, did Josh Gates really do that? Oh yeah, he really went there this day. We empirically fact check our own fact checkers. So yeah, we're good.
Yep. Well, it looks like that's all we really have for today. We hit all three topics that we were going to discuss today. Not real sure what we're going to have next week. We'll figure that out between now and then. But we definitely. What was that?
It's a mystery.
It is a mystery. It is a mystery. Maybe we'll have the history of mysteries.
Ooh.
But we'll have something we come up with, and we'll discuss it. And again, if you would like to join us for our recordings on these Zooms, unfortunately, that's the way we have to do it right now. My camera is not exactly the best quality, but as long as we got social distancing is necessary because of COVID-19, then this is kind of the way we have to do it until we actually have a better way to sit in the same room, face to face, talking to each other on the same camera, like a real show should be. Unfortunately, this is the way we have to do it for now, until we can make better arrangements.
This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm Darren. I'm one of the hosts. We got Ben is our other host. If you have any questions, please, again, feel free to join our History's Three Sides Facebook page and request an invitation, and we will get you approved and on there and ready to go to ask questions and discuss topics.
All
right, Ben. Thank you for being here with me today.
All right, brother. Look forward to next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to having you join us again next week. Thank you.
All right.